And do you know what else is a good thing? You. And me. That squirrel right there that you might not be able to see. The plants. Everything is perfect, everything is good. Sometimes we forget that. Don't just take a break from work. Dive into your relaxation time. Dive into your break. Sword fern, a native. Fronds are edible. Only eat them if you do eat them. I do not, but they technically are edible. Wild indigo, wild blue indigo, mostly used as a dye. It's also a nitrogen fixer. So it fixes nitrogen so that other plants that need nitrogen that are nearby can feed off of its excess via its root system. I used to be an eco-friendly landscaper, so occasionally I'm going to give you little bits of plant knowledge just to make things a little bit more dynamic and interesting. There's some sedum, those little guys down there. It's a succulent, not very hardy. Not sure what that is. I could, but I don't want to get too distracted. I'll sit and watch the birds for a minute. Well, I suppose since I'm sitting here, the birds probably will not come. Some birds are tamer than others. You don't mind the humans. Clearly, when you have feeders, they get used to people being around. Not this time. Oh, there's one. Let's see if I can get him without spooking him. There we go. A little view. I think that's a nuthatch or something like that. It's one of those birds that has the kind of long, strong beak and they can just smash hard objects. Nuts, I presume. And hard seeds. Animals are better equipped than we are. We can't do that. I mean, just like a squirrel, what they can do, or a chipmunk, or a beaver. You try to chew a log, see how far you get. Somebody will probably do it. Nothing I say is advice, by the way. When I said that the fronds, let's see if we can find one, of the sword fern are edible. Generally, you want to cook them lightly. This is what I've read from forager books. I've never actually done it. I'm curious though. If you want to, I am not going to stop you, but I'm not specifically recommending it. You have to be really careful what you say online. Trust me. I have stories. Oh, I have stories. Alright, well, I don't see any, but normally you would see it at the root base here. Alright, let's see if we can find a closer one. So you're going to see little sort of curlicues come up out of the ground, for lack of a better explanation. It's a little curled frond. And then it eventually, this thing I'm touching, it grows up into that, and then eventually it turns into this. It's not recommended to eat full grown. It's very bitter. I've read it's very bitter to eat a full grown frond. And probably give you a stomach ache. Those little ones are very tender and probably have a lot of phytonutrients, vitamins and minerals. Sort of like asparagus. You don't want to eat an overly ripe asparagus. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, this fern is related to asparagus. Oh, you don't see them yet, but that's a whole bunch of irises ready to pop out beautiful flowers. Silverleaf maple, it's a very nostalgic tree for me. My parents had a gigantic one both in the front and backyard in Crystal, Minnesota when I was growing up. And they had the little, I can't remember the name of them, but it's the type of seed. It's either Samara or that's not Samsara. It's something like that. It's a, here, I'll show you one. They grow, here we go. Usually there's one on each end. And they float down like a helicopter. So we call them helicopters when we were kids. See? Little helicopters. Isn't nature interesting? How did it think of that helicopter design? Who thought of that design? Who created nature? Good questions. Of course, I could tell you the general answer is God, which I suppose I believe. Yeah, I talk about God a lot, don't I? I do, but I also recognize that I don't really know. So I've read about it, I've heard about it, people seem to believe it. Other people believe that the universe sprang out of nothingness, and even the Tao means it came out of the void. Shunya in Buddhist terms. Buddhist teachings also teach the universe came out of the void. Creation myths or creation fact says that God came out of a singular point of origin and created the manifest universe. In 7 days? I don't think so. Forget about it. In some philosophies it said that the days of God are like 1,000 days for mankind, humankind. Gotta stop using those male pronouns. Humankind. So if that's true, let's just say 7,000 years it took to create Earth. But what is God anyways? What if out of that singular point of origin, intelligence existed? And intelligence became thought. Thought became word. And then breath, prana, chi, life was breathed into creation, animating it because it was inert, dead. Breathe life into that. Death became life. And then a cycle was developed of life and death. And it continued forever, and it's never stopped, as far as we know. But when did it start exactly? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So, all of these things like a helicopter pod, I mean, the frond, the fern has a sexual reproduction. It does not reproduce the normal way that plants do, through division, through seed. It creates sperm, and then that sperm finds an egg. And it is sort of like a tadpole. That's a plant. Who thought of all of this? So I want to assure you that this world is remarkable, despite what people will tell you. Silence. I know you're not supposed to do too many breaks in videos and be silent. Let's just do a moment. Right now. Silence, there's noise. Plane, there's an airport nearby, a small airport, mostly biplanes, small jets. It's called Flying Cloud Airport. What a great name. What a great name. I always thought that was cool when I was a kid. My dad would drive by. Flying Cloud, whoa, we're on a flying cloud. Cloud9, man. Take a break. I mean, dive in. What else are you going to do with your life that's so important? If you get too wrapped up in personalized work and take it home with you, which you kind of have to do anyway, it's part of life. What I mean is create just a little bit of space in that. Don't let it totally dominate you. You're not going to enjoy your life if you can't figure out how to create that balance. I promise you. This is what I learned from my sojourns in nothingness. observing society as an observer, barely engaged, just enough to get by, not interfering, participating, giving, fueling the economy, doing my part from a distance. So I learned to create space, and you can do that too. It's so easy. I know you want it, everyone wants it, but you have to create it for yourself. Nobody's going to give it to you. And very few people are going to feel sorry for you. Complaining won't solve it. Do or don't do. That is the action. It's enough for now. We'll continue this series in a moment. See you then.